Riedel, in the room, so we're at a distance. All good.
So I'm showing the agenda page. Can you all see that again?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Laszlo, do we have everyone?
Is it
Oh,
Laura
we
and
do.
Michael?
We're live now.
Yes, we have everyone.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. This meeting of the Manassas Park Economic Development Authority is called to order tonight on February 3rd, 2021, at 7 p.m. It's good to see everyone. At this moment, just want to ask our Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Very good, we'll move forward then. On item number 2, the approval of the agenda, we received the agenda several days ago, and everything looks in order. I do want to propose a minor adjustment to item number 8. Since we voted on item number 8 in our last meeting, I'd like to move that we strike item 8 from the record, from the agenda, since we will likely have a full evening, and we've already discussed that, and we can bring it up for a later business item.
Okay, that's fine. I'll show the record.
Okay, very good. So, are there any other adjustments to the agenda that anyone would like to suggest? Hearing none, then do we have a motion to approve the agenda as written with the adjustment to item number 8?
I so
Do we have a
motion.
motion?
Yes, Len Tabachi, I so motion.
A second.
Any opposed? Abstained? Hearing none, then the motion is carried and the agenda for this evening is approved. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone signed up for citizen time?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the room?
No.
No.
Okay, very good, thank you. Item number 4, the reading, correction, and approval of the minutes. There were no minutes generated from the last meeting, and I do have a question on that. Is it because it was a special meeting, or it's a lot of notes to compile in a short amount of time? Just curious about that.
We had 4 meetings in 2 weeks, and I couldn't get to all of them.
Well, and Lena, given the level of detail that you had in the last one, I'm not surprised at all. So, I suppose we can get to that when those meeting minutes are available.
Yes.
Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Very good. The next item is the treasurer's report. And on the agenda, it shows a total of $2,848.80. I'm very pleased to report that the actual balance in the bank is actually $1 more than that. So we made money. So, Laszlo, anything else on the treasurer's report?
I don't, and I see Pawn Yusuf, our CFO for the city's on. Pawn, do you have anything you'd like to share with the EDA?
No, I don't. You don't have the month of January available yet. That's the only thing I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawn.
Thank you, Pon.
You're welcome.
Item number 6, old business. We do not have any business that carried over from our previous meeting, so we'll move on to item number 7, new business. Now, the item of new business that we've been asked to take on is the resolution of the Economic Development Authority to issue lease revenue bonds for the city of Manassas Park. What I wanted to do, and what I think everyone collectively thinks is prudent, is for us to take a moment to get any questions answered and have any discussion that needs to be had. Documents were sent out for us to review. It was a hefty number of documents, and I do salute the people, you folks who put those documents together. Thank you for all of your hard work. That is a lot of work in putting all of that together, and trusting that everyone had an opportunity to look at all of that detail. Wanted to take a moment to address any questions that any might have. So I want to go around to the EDA, to the various EDA directors, and see what questions may be had. So we'll just go around. Director Tabachi, Len, do you have any questions for our experts this evening?
Yeah, two questions. I notice in paragraph 2 of the resolution, it says at the end, if directed by the city, the authority shall issue one or more series bonds, the interest on which is taxable for federal income tax purposes. So these will not be tax-free municipals.
It's actually a mix. Out of the current amount that we're looking at of roughly $30 million total, the $27.5 million being the actual project budget, somewhere between $3 and $5 million of that will actually be taxable, and the rest will be non-taxable. And the reason why some of that's taxable is because, for example, in the city hall on the ground level, there's going to be 6,100 square feet of space that the city's going to want to lease to private entities. Therefore, we're unable to utilize proceeds for that that are going to be non-taxable. Theoretically, there's like a 10% threshold that we have, but we want to give ourselves flexibility beyond that for the city. So that's one example. The building B, the site work for building B, again, that's eventually going to go to a private entity. So that has to be also taxable. Right now, between the work that Norton Scott's doing, getting all the numbers in place, shares of what goes where, coordinating that with our bond counsel and our financial advisors and myself, we're kind of getting down to what the numbers are looking like in the actual financial schedule that I posted this weekend as well and shared with you all. The number used on that was roughly $5 million of taxable. You notice that the interest rates right now, because they're so low across the board, you're talking about 100 basis point difference right now, roughly, between the taxable versus non-taxable. So it's still in the favor of the city and the EDA right now in terms of being able to issue bonds overall.
So some bonds will be taxable and some bonds won't be. So it won't be prorated over all the bonds. It'll just be by.
Yeah, it's
okay.
roughly $5 million. If you notice on the schedule, most of that we try to knock out within the first few years, because the longer you push the taxable, the higher the interest rate goes up.
Okay, what else? In one of the other documents, it wasn't this one, there was a section 10 on default. In the unlikely event there's a default, what's the roles and responsibilities of EDA and its members if a default might occur? Unlikely.
And maybe Jimmy or TW would probably be the best to answer that, about what steps would the EDA have to take if the city fails to appropriate the funds.
Sure, and well, this is TW. I'm happy to take that. Good evening, everyone. Basically, if there's a default, the EDA just sort of has to get out of the way. There will be a bond trustee, and so because these bonds are sold to the public, the trustee is sort of the gatekeeper for all the various bondholders that are going to end up holding these bonds. And so in a default scenario, the trustee sort of represents the bondholder's interests, and as security for the bond, the EDA has assigned to the trustee, for the benefit of the bondholders, pretty much all of its rights and remedies under the various documents. And so the trustee will be directing the actions to take and not to take in that circumstance. So the EDA isn't going to really need to take much action in a default scenario, because it's really the trustee that's going to be acting and directing the remedies and the actions on behalf of the bond.
And just for clarification, the actions that the trustee would likely take would be the city essentially would lose its rights since it's failing to make the lease payments. Essentially, we'd have to move out, and the trustee would then attempt to lease the space out to other entities who can then cover the bond premiums. Is that correct?
Yep, no, you got it, Counsel.
Okay, thank you. That answers it.
Director Aldur, do you have any questions for this panel?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Laura Odell, do you have any questions for the panel?
I have no question.
Director Michael Jones, do you have any questions for this panel?
I can't say that I do. I did try to read through it. There's a lot of information though, so I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. I do, I believe Director Bonilla is not in tonight.
That's correct.
Not, okay, thank you. I do have a series of questions, and I'm going to apologize up front for the number of questions that I have, and perhaps for the simplicity of some of the questions. And I'm asking them in the spirit of trying to gain as much clarity as we possibly can as a body before we decide to go forward. I just want us all to be clear on a few things as well. So just kind of a general question to everyone. I want to clarify the relationship between the city, the EDA, and what will eventually be the contractors who's actually going to do the work. So the EDA, and what I'm going to ask for you, TW, Jimmy, Laszlo, et cetera, to do is correct me if I'm wrong. So as I understand, the EDA issues the lease revenue bond. The city pays the contractor, right, using the proceeds from the lease revenue bonds in order to build, to build a city hall. The proceeds of the bonds go to the development of city hall and surrounding infrastructure. The city pays back the lease revenue bond, making good on the bond payments to the EDA, which in turn, through its various brokers, designees, and assigns, pays the various bondholders through the trustee over the course of a 30-year period. The collateral for the collateral for this is the city hall itself, as well as the city's lease bond revenue payments. And then essentially, the EDA is a pass-through entity. Did I capture all of those points accurately and correctly?
I think you did, Mr. Chairman, with one clarification on the payment. So the way the documents are written, the city makes a lease payment semi-annually under the financing lease, which the EDA uses to make the payments on the bond, and those go from, under the documents, the legal pathway, if you will, is city to EDA to trustee to bondholders.
Got it.
And the practical reality is that the city will pay the trustee directly, just because there's no need to have the money flow through the EDA, because as you say, the EDA is a pass through here, but the trustee is responsible for getting the money to the bondholders.
Understood. TW,
Hey,
thank
this
you.
is Jimmy. Let me make one other point, in particular if there's anybody from the public listening. You said that the City Hall would be the collateral for the under the lease payment. Just be clear that the collateral is the leasehold interest that the EDA has in the building itself. And so what Laszlo described earlier was accurate, was that if there were ever a failure of the city to appropriate and pay their lease payment, the city could be kicked out of City Hall by the trustee. And again, the trustee would then try to re-let the facility to generate revenue to pay the bondholders. And they would be able to do that for a period that lasted 5 years beyond the final payment under the lease payment and the payment to the bondholders. So they get a little bit longer than that 30 years to try to recoup their bond investment. But eventually, once that occurs, the property will revert back to, and the leasehold will come back to the city at that time.
After the remedies have been made.
Well, if by remedies you mean the running of time, and TW step in if I'm wrong, but even if the bondholders do not get paid back in full, after that 30 years plus 5 years that the trustee is allowed to try to re-let the facility will revert back to the city.
Understood. So in a sense, and forgive the stupidity of my question, but so in a sense, the city owns the building, is making lease payments to the trustee, who then makes payments to the bondholders. So in essence, it's sort of like the way I do with my mortgage. I own my house, but I'm really paying a mortgage. I own it as long as I pay my mortgage, to the bank. Is the relationship similar?
No.
It is, but there are some intervening agreements, as sort of Jimmy alluded to, because if somebody gets their mortgage foreclosed on, then the lender can sell that property, free and clear, and the old owner can't get back in. But the way these documents work, that right to foreclose and sell even is limited for basically a period of 35 years from the day that we close. So it's very similar in that instance, but because we've got this sort of intervening leaseback arrangement between the city and the EDA and ultimately the benefit of the bondholders, that sort of foreclosure that would extinguish your ability to get back into your house in a mortgage situation doesn't exist exactly in this situation, because there's the lender here can only do that for 35 years.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chair, if I can add as well.
This is Joe Mason from Town Report. Laszlo, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that the risk from the city side, Mr. Chair, really is twofold, and Jimmy and Joe, feel free to add additional. And I want to make this clear to the public as well, and to everyone, that not only would we lose City Hall space, so we had to figure out what to do for City Hall, which is very legally complex, especially when it comes to voter registration and the law surrounding that as well. So again, the likelihood of non-appropriations is very extremely slim. Number two, a massive credit hit to our city credit. It's something that's critical for us to maintain a strong credit rating. It's something that everyone looks at for all of our every function that we do as a city, every contract we enter into, every lease purchase agreement we do for our equipment, our fleet, our short-term, interactions with banks, our receipt of federal funds, and all these things, again, require that. We were kind of at a very difficult place just a few years ago. We didn't have a credit rating. When we were unauditable, it was a nightmare for the city to go through. So there are kind of severe repercussions. So the overwhelming incentives for the city are to always make your payments on time and not have to deal with the the consequences of failure to do so. So I just wanted to reinforce that, and Joe, if you want to add anything.
No, you read my mind. That was exactly what I was going to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Another question that I have is, what is the exact scope of the initial 35 million that's proposed? What is the city getting for that in terms of building and infrastructure?
Yeah, so I can answer that.
How far does that scope end?
Yeah, so one point of clarification, then I'll answer the question directly. So the 35 million is a not to exceed amount. That's not the actual amount that we think we'll actually have to issue. The current project budget is estimated at 27.5 million. I believe let me make sure I have the numbers correct here. Yeah, so about 27.5 million is a project budget. $2.3 million right now is estimated for a capitalized interest fund. If you notice the payment schedule that the city's making, we don't actually start making payments until FY24, but payments are being made to the bondholders through this capitalized interest fund. So there's a fund that's essentially being borrowed to pay off principal, to start paying off the interest over the first few years, and the city starts paying half the interest in FY24, full interest in FY25, and full principal and interest in FY26. So, and then of course you have part of that 2.3 million, again, it's just kind of the standard processing fees for issuance of the bond, for all the different elements that are involved in that. For the $27.5 million project budget, that was part of my briefing at the last meeting where I showed that slide that showed the City Hall building, the 3-level City Hall building, 51,000 square foot, the public plaza, 2 surface parking lots for public use, the ground level or the first floor of the 4-level parking garage, the top 3 levels being financed by the VRE, the bottom level finance is part of this, and then again, all of the utilities, which end up being a lot of the expense when you're talking about stormwater, water and sewer lines, and roads as well. It's beyond utilities, undergrounding a lot of the existing utilities as well, the tall electric poles and everything else, getting all that underground and kind of add to the view of the downtown. Those are all the different components. So it's beyond just the city hall. There's a significant amount of infrastructure associated to service the city hall and to service the downtown parking infrastructure that we want to build for the city hall lot, which is directly behind the city hall, and then the general kind of public parking that we want to make available to our residents for kind of the central community city gathering place that we want to create here. Does that answer your question, Mr. Chair?
It does. Thank you. That's helpful. Another question I have is, does the lease revenue bond impact taxpayers of the city in any way?
Yeah, so the reason why we have this capitalized interest fund, it was directly because of the promise that we were making to our residents during the town halls and the public hearings that these payments are going to be paid out of the proceeds of the development itself. So the actual construction of the residential units alone, I just put that on my memo here as kind of a reference. The timeline based off of kind of the projections right now from Norton Scott and Stanley Martin, you can see between FY24 and FY25, we'll have $1 million in new annual revenues just from the residential piece of phase 1A. And then when they're completed, about 1.87 million just from that one piece, not counting the commercial real estate, and then also not counting the overall downtown development agreement, which is approved by the governing body the same night, which you all aren't discussing tonight, but there's a development that's going to happen across the street from here as well, which is going to add a significant amount of tax base. So the reason why we're pushing back the payments to 24-25 is to give us a 2-3 year cushion to make sure that those revenues are coming in place, so that we are using only those proceeds, the new tax revenue generated by the development, to pay these unfunded capital liabilities instead of existing tax payers. And this is an important point because there's a lot of existing unfunded capital liabilities for this city hall building and other public facilities that are going to be addressed through the new proceeds of this development. So we're actually helping out taxpayers twofold by not having to pay for kind of renovations or repairs for these older buildings, plus the financing of new buildings. It's all being done as part of this development. So that's a less of a burden for the taxpayers in terms of dealing with unfunded capital liabilities, plus a massive amount of profits kind of after your post payments. What the tax benefits will be for the residents will be tremendous over the 30-year period, and that wasn't factoring even in any sales tax revenue, meals tax, business license tax revenue. Those three sources that when we actually have the businesses in place that we're paying for it, doesn't factor that in, and it doesn't factor the lease revenue also generated by the city for that 6,100 square feet of space on the ground level as well that we'll be charging for those tenants as well. So there's significant amount of additional revenues that will generate profits for the city to help our tax base, to help reduce the tax rate, to help fund on other capital liabilities. We built a lot of facilities in the 2000s, 4 new schools, police station, fire station, community center. Those buildings will need renovations likely in the 2030s, some major renovations and some major repairs likely even before that. Right now we're talking about the high school roof right now as a big project as well. This will generate the revenues to help us deal with those challenges that our current tax base does not support. So that's kind of the goal behind this. So to answer your question, the answer is it will not impact current taxpayers. It will actually help them by preventing them from needing to pay for the current unfunded capital liabilities and giving them the new facilities that they won't have to pay for, be paid for by the proceeds of this development.
Thank you. That does answer my question. So, and I'm going to apologize for this question, but I feel like I need to ask it anyway because it was a pretty thick stack of paperwork to get through. But is any member of the EDA personally responsible or liable in any remotely perceivable way, shape, or form as they relate to these lease revenue bonds?
So TW, I'm going to defer to you as bond counsel.
Yeah, no. And to that point, I can give you a couple of references if you want to look at paragraph 6 and mostly probably paragraph 7 of the EDA's resolution. It does specify there how the bonds are non-recourse to the EDA, and they're not, the EDA is not responsible for any payments except to the extent that they get paid they get payments made under the lease. And then in section, it's buried in the document, but 15.1 of the bond indenture, which is on page 39 and 40 of that document, there's a section that basically says, no officer or director of the EDA is, responsible or liable in their personal capacity for anything associated with the bond, except that they act sort of in bad faith.
Understood. Thank you. That covers all of the questions that I have, and I'm grateful for your forbearance through all of that. I just wanted to just pause for a moment just to be sure that there aren't any other questions from any of the other EDA officers or directors.
Can I just ask a clarification again, TW? What section was that again? I just want to have that up on the screen so everyone can see that.
Sure. 15.1. So pages 39 and 40 of that document. Oh, that must be different on my computer. If you scroll up, there it is. Yeah.
Let me zoom in. I just want to make sure that everyone can read that. So, Mr. Chair, back to you.
What was the name of that document again?
That was the bond indenture. So when you go to the site that I shared with you, it was actually the first attachment.
The first one. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is that the one that's got that section 10 about default?
I believe it, does that also cover the default as well, too?
10.
Well, there's a couple sections for defaults, but that might be the indenture that you're looking at as for section 10.
Oh, section
Because I think that financing lease defaults are in another section.
Yes, a lot of stuff.
So, Mr. Chair, this section here is the direct answer to your question about liability.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. So just want to open it up for any final questions from the EDA. Pon, do you have any questions for this group?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Secretary, any questions?
No.
Is that a negative?
Yeah, that was a no.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion that needs to be had? Any other final questions or discussion?
I just wanted to note that the governing body did vote last night for their resolution to authorize this transaction to happen as well. So there's the commitment already from the city to support this as well. So I just wanted to add that point, along with just noting, if you didn't notice, the original numbers that I put here for payments, I got FY24 wrong. It's 400 in the $400,000 range, and then FY25 is where the 826,000 comes in. That was the updated payment schedule, which was the last attachment here. That's what goes over all, the interest rates and payment schedule. Kind of the simplest document to look at from a city perspective would be the last page, which shows the annual payments that the city will be making using the proceeds from the development, and then specifically the EDA schedule, which you're getting the money from the city to pay for directly to the trustee. Those you'll see on the previous pages right before that as well.
So question, what are we voting on tonight? We voting on the resolution, and that activates all these other documents?
Yeah, it is a resolution, and the TW, maybe you want to clarify what the resolution does specifically.
Sure, thanks, Laszlo. Yeah. So yes, we'd be looking for the EDA to adopt the resolution as presented. What the resolution does is authorize the bond financing, and on the terms that the governing body approved at its meeting last night, it authorizes and the chair or vice chair and secretary to enter into all of the documents that were provided to you, and all of the other ancillary documents that are going to be required as part of the closing certificates and things of that nature. So, and then sort of once that happens, then yes, we are sort of activated, and there are no more approvals either from the city or from you that the working group needs to go ahead and sort of get this done. There are certainly other sort of gating items on our financing calendar, but in terms of the approvals from the city EDA side, this would be it.
So this document we're handed today is not the resolution, is it? Because I thought I saw something that would be signed by the chairman of the EDA, because this seems to be signed by the secretary, treasurer.
Yeah, there's all their documents that are then signed by the chair, but from my understanding is this resolution authorizes the chair to sign, just like the governing body resolutions authorize me to sign off on some of the other documents as well. So you'll notice, like on the lease itself, the chair is signing on behalf of the EDA, and then I'll be signing on behalf of the city. And there are just multiple documents throughout that the chairman would be signing. And Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but this resolution authorizes that.
So all we're doing is pushing the go button.
Yes.
In effect.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Any other questions? Hearing none, what I'd like to do in taking this vote for the resolution of the Economic Development Authority to issue the lease revenue bonds is after a motion has been made and seconded, I'd like to go director by director to get their yes or no, given the importance of it, so that we can register it accordingly. Is there a motion to approve the resolution of the Economic Development Authority to issue lease revenue bonds?
I so motion.
I second the motion.
Okay. Director, so we have a motion and second. So we will proceed with the vote. Director Tabacci, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Durer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Odell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Jones, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I, as the chairman and director and a director, also vote yes. The motion is passed unanimously. All right, at this time, we will move on to our next item of business, and that is the discussion with the brand related to branding.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and just want to thank Jimmy and TW and Joe from the financing, from our financial advisors and bond counsel as well. You're welcome to stick around, but you can also drop off if you like as well, but we appreciate everything. And Mr. Chair, joining us tonight is a consultant, Mr. Ben Muldrow. He's been visiting the city the last couple days in person, driving from Delaware, and touring the city, engaging with different members of the community and the city staff and with the governing body. Last night, and I'll turn it over to him and kind of just introduce himself and his company, but I worked with him and his firm in my previous job in Love'sville when we did something very similar, but a much smaller scale, of course, where we built a town square commercial that's now 100% leased. There was concerns about it, was it going to work or not? It ended up working out, and a big part of that, there's so many facets to getting a development done right. Of course, the market analytics, making sure that you have the base to support it, the numbers to make it work, the right concept plan that will work from a retail perspective, and then two critical elements, kind of your business capture strategy for recruitment, and then also your customer attraction strategy. And that's a part of kind of what this branding is going to be. Is it really supports that branding, marketing to our customers that we want to come to our downtown, to the businesses that we want to join us as well. And equally important, something that announces our community to the rest of the region, to the world of who we are as a community that has buy-in from the community as well. And with the Economic Development Authority, since you all are kind of the lead in helping us with this economic development effort, representing residents of our community as well, it's important to engage you in this process as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who can introduce himself and kind of give a little background about what he's doing, and then open it up to any feedback from you all as well. So Ben.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laszlo, and thank you to the EDA for letting me come and speak to you tonight. I think I would be remiss to not say that, first of all, congratulations on what you just accomplished. I feel a bit like you just won the championship game and you've been told you need to stick around afterwards to clean the trash off the field. So I want to be real honest with that. I was really impressed with the thoughtfulness of your questions and the thoroughness in which you went through that. As you heard Laszlo say, I'm Ben Muldrow. I'm a owner of Arnett Muldrow and Associates. We are an urban planning firm based out of Greenville, South Carolina. I lead up our Mid-Atlantic operations out of Central Delaware. We have had the privilege of developing brand and marketing systems for over 650 communities in 40 states and 5 countries. We've probably done more of this kind of work with more communities than just about anybody out there. I am particularly excited about working with Manassas Park and what is going on in your city center project. And it feels most akin to a project that we did about 3 years ago in Maitland, Florida, which is a traditional community that kind of grew up in the Orlando metro, has a very long history, always lacked a traditional downtown, and made the decision that as a community, they deserved a place to gather as a community, and decided that they wanted to create a downtown for themselves. And we were brought in to create the branding for that downtown before that downtown was a reality. And so I think that not only are we well versed in working in Virginia and the nuances of independent cities as they relate to the cities that neighbor them and the counties that they exist, surrounded by, but we all are also versed in communities that are truly trying to reinvigorate their core with significant development. As you heard Laszlo say, I came into the community yesterday morning. I had a pretty full day touring the community, getting an opportunity to meet staff members, and last night I was able to address the governing body, was able to watch them also unanimously approve the support of the bonds. So again, finding out a lot about what is going on. Spent the morning talking with staff members, learning about things like what Parks and Rec is working on, what community development is working on, some of the challenges that exist in the community, and then also being able to learn a little bit more about the history of the community. I don't think any conversation about Manassas Park would go on without someone mentioning the East End and the West End. And I think that this particular focus on reinvesting in the heart of the community is the perfect opportunity to create the place where those two components come together. And with further connection to VRE and this residential recruitment that will be an obvious component of this project, we see it as being essential in making sure that new people who call Park home truly become vested stakeholders and don't simply see Manassas Park as a place to lay their head each night. Our process is a pretty aggressive one. Oftentimes community branding processes might stretch out 10 to 12 months. We are targeting to have tools on the ground in the next 2 months. We are, after this initial visit and kind of talking to the core stakeholder groups, we will be moving on to launching a community input survey. We want to be as thoughtful as possible in being able to listen to the constituents and the residents and hear those quality and kind of passion points that they have about the place that they call home. And then from there, we'll be returning in several weeks where we'll be doing kind of a design on the ground type process, where we will present back to the community our first round of branding recommendations. And not only is this going to be focused on this downtown development, but it's also going to be focused on truly creating a destination brand for all of Manassas. I didn't mention, but we also got an opportunity around lunchtime today to meet with some of the development team that is working on this project, hear a little bit about what their marketing mindset is to be able to get residents in here, to be able to get retail tenants in to occupy this space that is planned. And I think that it is really, really fortuitous to have all of these things going on at the same time. So we will be looking at graphic communication packages, logos and identities, how to name the districts, how to stitch everything together. We will be looking at messaging strategies, everything from taglines to just how you roll that out through social media, how you get the word out. One of the big things that has been brought up is wayfinding. We're pretty well versed in the world of wayfinding and signage as well. How do we use signage to connect people into the core and make sure that that all of this amazing effort doesn't go unnoticed to the community? So it will be a pretty robust toolkit that will be made available both to the government itself, but really is aimed at the community organizations as well as the business community. We want everyone to be able to get tools to build brand equity in Manassas Park. And I guess the final thing I would say before I open it up, because I would love to hear from the directors, I think that it would be remiss for me to not also mention that obviously one of the biggest challenges from a branding standpoint is the city of Manassas Park, located directly adjacent to the city of Manassas. And when you have two jurisdictions that share the same name, that is always a focus on how do you stick out? How do you make sure that people understand who you are? I have already heard stories from the trenches of being in multiple month conversations and still not being able to convince people, no, we're actually a whole different city. So that diversification, I think, will be very, very important. But I will say that we have already identified that there is something truly beautiful, about the fact that park is the thing that makes you different, and you have more green space per capita than any other city in Northern Virginia. And then the second thing that is kind of beautiful around this project that you just, kind of approved the bonds for is you are the youngest city in the state of Virginia, and you are getting ready to endeavor on the creation of Virginia's newest downtown. And we find that to be remarkably exciting, and we feel like we've got some really, really strong foundation for the stories that we need to tell and being able to create some of the tools that help to accomplish that. But with that, I'm going to shut up, and I would love to hear some of the thoughts from the directors.
Hey, Mark, you're actually on mute.
I said that was going to be the anthem for 2020 and 2021. I had a nickel for every time somebody said. Ben, thank you so much for your words. We appreciate them. And I had a chance to see your talk on the replay earlier today. So I'm seeing you twice today. So what I want to do is just similar to what we did before, just go around to each of the directors, see if they have any questions or comments for you, Ben.
Great.
So Director Tabachi, do you have any questions or comments for Ben?
No. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Director Durr, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Muldrow?
Yes, I do. First, I'd like to thank you for your enthusiasm, which comes with the nature of your business being in the branding. But I have a very deep interest in looking at how groups are represented and brought to the table in terms of inclusion. And I'm glad you referenced the east and the west side of our city. And I just wanted to kind of get a sense of, when you came and met with some of the folks here, did you have a chance to go over and kind of get a sense of, how our west side is, and what is kind of conceptually, how do you see bringing that together and branding the city of Manassas Park as a city that's inclusive to all, and that we celebrate the rich cultures that we have that live here? That's my question.
Absolutely. Such a great question, Director Durr. I think that, well, first of all, let me hit it in a couple different ways. From a first standpoint, it's engagement in the process. And part of the reason that we always launch with the digital survey, and actually one of the great questions from a governing body last night was making sure that as we craft the community input survey that we're able to be specific enough with some of our questions to be able to figure out where those voices are coming from. And I've already started to dig in with our Parks and Recreation meeting earlier today. I dug in a little about how do you communicate in multiple languages? Do you find, dual languages in a single format? Do you find completely separate forums in different languages? And had some really great conversations about how up until this point, it seems as though from kind of the formal communication standpoint, when it is kind of process related, it seems to be that most of the things are still living in English only, but in the information and in the dialogue, then you are very much kind of dual language. So what we're going to do is we're going to craft a survey strategy that allows us to capture voices from both. But then we're also not going to stop at the simple idea of, well, we made the survey available. We're going to try to cull through the voices we feel like we're hearing from in that survey. And then in our return visit, we're going to try to have to get creative with some ways that we might be able to capture some of those voices that we might not have heard. I'll tell you, we've done some pretty crazy things. We've ended up in pizza parlors and strip centers asking people as they were waiting for their takeout orders to go. As you get to know a community, you start to get to know habits. You get to know where people congregate versus where they don't. And we really want to make sure that as much as the word diversity was used over the past 2 days to describe Manassas Park, we want diversity to be ingrained in the character, not a simple attribute that happened. And I think one of the greatest things that I've learned in doing this is that when you truly embrace diversity, it means that you're willing to sometimes set aside the highest level of efficiency. Efficiency has everybody thinking the exact same way. And the best way to achieve efficiency is to get voices that think the exact same way. So we do want to adopt a true sense of diversity with understanding that sometimes that takes us a little bit more time. So that's kind of from the input and listening side of it. But then also we want to make sure that as we move forward, the message that we convey about Manassas Park is a message of a diverse community. We want to celebrate it, and we want it to be part of that storyline so that this downtown development, instead of being seen as a wedge between East and West, it truly is the place where they meld together, the place where they come together to celebrate, the place where they come together to congregate and eat and be a community. We hear great stories of how that does happen in small sections. We hear, 4th of July here is seeing the whole community, and this event over here is bringing together everyone. But we want to make sure that that concept of diversity is celebrated in the identity of place. So I know that was long-winded. Hopefully that kind of hits on it. We still have a lot to learn to be able to accurately convey the character of Manassas Park, but I do think we're starting to pick up on the challenges that we need to make sure of the voices that need to be included.
Okay, and I thank you for that. And just one other comment. One was, in terms of not hearing voices or the people who are not sharing their voice, I would really encourage you to, if you could identify some gatekeepers within the communities, because there's a level of, there could be a lack of trust. And then in terms of the word diversity, because it's been thrown around a lot, not only here, but in other circles, if you can think of it as diversity is being asked to the dance, inclusion is being asked to dance once you get there. So if we could have a place where we can ensure that the people are at the dance, but now we create an environment where they have an opportunity to participate and be included, I think that's where I would just ask, and that concludes my questions.
Well, thank you so much. I love that example, and I think the sad truth is that if you take that illusion one step forward, too many communities are satisfied with simply putting a poster up advertising the dance and then calling it done. So that idea of both the personal invitation and the inclusion, I love that goal, and I echo that completely. Thank you for your comments.
That's all I have.
Yeah, and if I could just add that to that too, with the town halls that we did, it was very impressive because we reached out to kind of both sides of the city, had really good turnout. I did a couple of Spanish town halls themselves where I presented it in Spanish, engaged with the community, and I was overwhelmed with how supportive they were of this concept of what we're trying to do here. So it was kind of like the first step. Then COVID happened, unfortunately, because that was all in person.
Yeah.
And so it makes it definitely challenging. But you're absolutely right about trust as well. Like when I show up to a business and I'm in a suit, like mainly on the west side, there's a little hesitancy to engage with me, but I have been sending out, like, for PPE distribution, COVID-19 information. Our fire department is very trusted, and we have some Spanish speakers on our fire department as well who've been to businesses, handed out PPE. So there's like a level, they always want to, offer them treats and other things. So I think that's, it's very, it's challenging during COVID-19, but there's ways that we've been trying, working to make sure that we have connections with people across our community. But I was very surprised, and pleasantly surprised with kind of the enthusiasm that the people had on the west side of the city for this initiative that we're trying here. Just as long as, again, they get some kind of return from it also, not just kind of the central community guide, but a focus on service delivery improvements to their community as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Director Jones, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Muldrow?
Yes, I do. So you mentioned that you guys have done this in other locations. So kind of really two questions. One, can you give me an example of a deploy or scenario or community where you encountered, kind of this dichotomy that you're seeing here, and what was it like, and how what did you do to kind of address that diversity issue or whatever, and how did it turn out? That's question one, and then I have a follow-up.
Okay, I'll tell you, the first one that comes to mind was a project that we worked on in Laurel, Mississippi. And as you can imagine, Laurel, Mississippi, it's a relatively small community. They have neighborhoods that are very much divided by race. And you have districts that seem to be the districts that all of the municipal attention is paid to. And then you have other neighborhoods that seem to be forgotten. And we were doing kind of a community-wide master plan for them. And one of the things that I chose to do is we were creating the wayfinding systems, is all of my wayfinding treatments, all of my neighborhood gateway designs, all of my park signage were only shown examples inside these underserved communities. We wanted to show those neighborhoods that their sign was going to look exactly like the sign of the neighborhood that everybody thought got everything, and their signs were going to come out first. It was it seemed like a really simple gesture. I think a lot of times we always go through and we want to be diplomatic, but we also, like, we don't necessarily engage those individual neighborhoods with those passionate citizens. So in creating that signage package, what I did was I created an opening. I created a hole for every neighborhood to create their own design element integrated in to that signage and those banners. So not only did we create infrastructure and say you are important because you're in our first wave, but we also created an artistic and kind of expression-based opportunity for the community, the neighborhood to get together and create something and then immediately see it make its way into the community. So it was almost a trust building exercise. It's like, we want you to participate, and we want to reinforce that participation with delivering things that make you proud of your neighborhood. So I think with Manassas Park, one of the biggest things that we need to really do is, I don't think the goal is to erase West Side versus East Side. I think that's unrealistic. But I think that what you want to do is, instead of trying to erase the two different identities, you want to change 28 from being the Great Wall of China, and you want to turn it into, we have an interesting character district in the West End, an interesting character district in the East End, and they come together in Park Central. This place in the middle where it connects the two parts. So I think the biggest thing that we're really going to focus in on is diminishing the divide while spotlighting the character differences that exist, and give them a reason to be proud of the different kinds of character that make up Manassas Park. Does that make sense?
Yep. So so what you guys did in Laurel, how long ago was that, and what does that look like today? Did that level of enthusiasm and continue on, and if it did, what did you do to have to maintain that?
Well, one of the best ways, obviously what we really were trying to set the stage for there was a dramatic cultural change in the way that the city serves its citizens. To be honest, one of the best kind of indicators of success that I can give is, there was this one neighborhood in particular that, they were passionate. They had a phenomenal neighborhood association, but they also felt completely ignored by the city. And about 5 years after we worked there, one of their neighbors was elected to be mayor. And that kind of going from being invisible to having the leader of the community coming from there, to me, that's a pretty good indication that some of that culture of inclusion was starting to change.
If I can just add to what Ben and his team are providing is kind of a branding framework, a messaging for our community and for the outside world. It's really going to be incumbent on the city government as well to kind of keep that going and keep the strategies going for inclusion and enhancing our ability to with customer service, communications, building kind of that capacity for us to do that, because we don't have that right now. That's something that we don't have a communications office. We don't have a customer service division where people can call and they'll always guarantee that someone's going to pick up the phone and help them out with their service, to go out and proactively engage, as we've been gutted as a city staff since the Great Recession. It's one of our weak points, and you saw with this last election of the new council members, where that was one of the big initiatives they were talking about is how do we better engage with the community, because it's just something that's been lacking. So Ben and his team kind of give us a framework, but in reality it's kind of our responsibility to, since we're part of this community, kind of make that happen, whether it's the EDA governing body, city staff kind of working together with community leaders to help make that happen in a sustainable fashion. So I just wanted to kind of add that caveat that Ben won't be saving us here fully. He'll give us some good frameworks here, but it's up to us to kind of make it a reality.
Yeah. Get it started. Okay, thank you. Yep. Appreciate it.
And just to kind of piggyback off Laszlo's comment, we are trying to be as intelligent and streamlined with the recommendations as possible. We have already learned a little bit about some of the migration plan inside the city of Manassas Park to the SmartGov program. that comes out of Cary, North Carolina. That is very much, that's kind of an operational streamlining backside, but it also is going to offer more engagement to the community itself. So anytime we might be able to layer branding tools on top of some organizational efficiencies, then we start to convert the mindset and also the perception of the community. I always use the phrase, we need to land on the culture of how do we get to yes. And as a city, if your staff's mindset is how do we get to yes, how do we come together and get to a yes, get to a green light, get to a moving forward, then that is a really, really good culture to have. Many cities across America fight with the, I have been empowered to enforce this code or this ordinance, and let me tell you all the things that you're not allowed to do.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jones.
Vice Chairman Odell, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Muldrow?
Yes, I just want to echo what everyone else has been saying, because those are the questions that I also had. I want to make sure that this is a project that focuses on inclusion of all our different races, cultures, and backgrounds in the city. I'm a center with Fairfax County, and one thing that I hear a lot is that we have these beautiful developments and with this same type of downtown scope and feel, but minority cultures don't feel welcome in these environments. And so I want to make sure that what we do is done equitably as far as, reaching out, community engagement, and that the branding really mirrors the diversity of the community. I think this would be a really good opportunity to work with the local businesses as far as placement of surveys, place surveys in smaller markets on the west side, and throughout the areas that it's accessible to others, especially at the community center. A lot of people go there, a lot of families, a lot of kids, and then multiple languages and surveys to kind of help make sure we don't leave anyone out.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Director Odell.
All right. Has everyone had an opportunity to ask their questions? Then, despite what you saw in the last session, I only have one question for you, and that is, what is the next step? What is the next step?
Absolutely. So obviously, next step for us is going to be assembling and launching the public survey, the community survey. The next step for you all is we would really love to have an opportunity just to keep you guys up to speed with everything that we're learning along the way. And so I think that at next month's meeting, we would love to be able to share some of those survey results back with you all. And then hopefully the following meeting, we would love to be able to start presenting some of the toolkit to you and hear your thoughts and let you know, how things are going. So we just want to keep you part of the process. And then especially as we start to get to the point of creating some of that kind of end deliverable toolkit, we want to make sure that they are falling in line with the things that the EDA is trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Mr. Muldrow. Appreciate your time and your energy and the vision and your experience, and thank you for bringing it here.
Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you for the time to speak with you all tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. So there isn't any action that we need to take. That was informational. We are moving on to the chairman's report. I don't have anything planned for that except just to say thank you to my fellow directors for plowing through all of that information that was sent to us, and for your engagement, for your involvement, for all the great questions that you've asked this evening, and for your vote as well, and for your engagement in that way. So at this point, I will we'll move on to the next agenda item, the director's report. So this is your opportunity to share any comments that you might have. So we'll just go around. Director Tabacci, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'm looking at the map of the city and I see this huge green space up in the northeastern side. What's happening with that, if anything?
Yeah, so you'll actually see a conversation during the CIP, maybe even a little bit before that as well, where you'll see in the Parks and Rec CIP that there's going to be some options for what to do with that park if we want to make it a more active park. We'll present that option in the governing body. Of course, there's going to be a lot of costs associated with that. Mm-hmm. Also, the plan for maintenance, renovation of those trails, because those trails aren't in best condition as well. So that's a big piece. One of the most critical components of that park is the Russia Branch stream, because doing restoration for that is likely the best way that the city is going to be able to achieve the mandated pollutant reductions to our stormwater requirements from the Department of Environmental Quality. So that's something that our Community Development Department is working on with potentially pursuing public-private partnerships for either, fusion of credits that we would get and then banking credits to sell them, potential for reforestation, thinking about ways that we can achieve some of these environmental mandates that we have as a city to get in compliance with, because that's a fee that's being passed on to our residents right now as part of their real estate tax bill. So when people get their real estate tax bill, it's not just the taxes that are, looking big, but you also have that fee, which the pressure is for it to keep going up. So we're trying to figure out clever ways to keep that price tag down as much as possible for our residents. And that park is key for that. And to be honest with you, that park came at the perfect time. And when COVID came, you just saw a dramatic increase in people just now taking advantage of that, wanting to get out of the home and reconnect with nature, and that park has allowed us to do that. So that's added again to the earlier point. I mean, the amount of park space that we have now is kind of a share of our land size is pretty incredible when compared to other jurisdictions.
Is that the old golf course?
That is the old golf course, yes, formerly General Ridge's golf course, now Blooms Park. Mm-hmm.
I hated that golf course.
I heard it was challenging.
Yes,
Yeah.
It got some pretty nasty hills when you walk it too.
Yes, indeed.
It's a good walk, that's for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Tabacci. Anything else? I'll take that as a no. Director Durer.
And I'm going to take this off because I'm social distancing, and just want to say I'm really happy to be a part of this group. I was impressed with the last meeting with the amount of information and the I guess just the overall level of I guess fidelity that you all were using to go through all this process, and even today. So I'm really happy to be a member of this community, but more importantly, knowing that people like you all are serving, and I have a chance to do that with you. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Director Durer. The feeling is definitely mutual. Thank you. Director Jones.
No, I don't have anything at this time. I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Odell.
I have nothing.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr. City Manager?
Yes.
Anything for the City Manager report?
Sure. Yeah. I wanted to kind of echo sentiments made tonight and just really thank you all for playing this vital role in allowing this downtown to take this next important step. It really is critical when we start talking about those things that we want to accomplish as a community of alleviating the tax burden on our residents while also generating the revenues that we do need to continue to expand our service delivery to our residents and making sure that we're serving our residents to the best of our ability and able to fund different initiatives that our community, our elected officials want to take on for our community and have properly funded infrastructure as well. This is what's going to enable that. As you all know, our tax base is not the strongest. We've over-leveraged ourselves with debt. We were in a very tough spot a few years ago, and we've taken some pretty important steps here to kind of turn around from where we were just a few years ago. And in order to kind of take us to this next level, this is one of the most critical components for us to do that. So I want to just thank you all for playing an important role, and I ask that you keep being involved, keep our residents engaged, keep letting the city, our governing body, kind of know where the community is at, right? What are the different things that we all hope to accomplish? We try to do surveys and get a good understanding, but it's really through against community leaders that we identify what the issues are and what we can be doing better as a city. In order to be doing things better, there's only so much you can do with technology, efficiency. You need the money at the end of the day to do a lot of things as well. And this is what this project will allow, along with providing, hopefully, that central gathering place for our community to come together to enjoy a future of expanded event opportunities that we want to do when this does take place, and just better downtown infrastructure for our community to come together and enjoy their quality of life here as well. So I just want to thank you all for playing this critical role in supporting the city in this next initiative to make sure that we're not just financially viable as a city, but actually financially stronger to start tackling these issues that we want to get to. So again, thank you all very much for everything you all do.
Thank you, Laszlo. So I think that this is a good moment to take a collective deep breath. It was a big night for us. This was a big vote related to the lease revenue bond resolution, and I thank you all for engaging in this process. So last item, before we go to the last item, just want to open up one final time. Does anyone have any final questions, comments, anything to bring up before we move on to item number 12? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 12, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.